What's up, you guys? If you've been struggling to determine which type of business to buy or whether you should even be buying a business at all, this video is for you because I'm going to share with you a framework that is very good at exposing some of the things that these gurus gloss over that are always telling you that you should always be buying businesses, or here's the secret to working only 4 hours a week, or whatever. When you use this framework, you're going to be able to determine which business is right for you, so you're going to avoid that whole shiny object syndrome. You're going to figure out which gurus you should be listening to and which ones you should be avoiding. And finally, you can use this same framework in your due diligence process if you decide to buy one of these companies. So one of the reasons why this is such a problem for most people is that whenever they look at buying a business, they're looking for the best business. And the problem is when they try to search for that, they're going to bump into a lot of gurus that have conflicting ideas. Oh, you should get laundromats, no car washes, FedEx routes, bread routes, rentals, storage units. There's lots of really good opportunities out there. The problem is they're not all the right opportunity for you. And what happens is a lot of these gurus will focus on one particular aspect of the business, which is very, very favorable, and then forget about the other aspects that are not quite so great. They don't want to talk about that part. But when you back up and you look at all three primary components of a business, this will become a lot easier for you to be able to determine which one's right for you. So every business opportunity out there is really going to vary in only three primary categories. Now, in those categories, there's a ton of different components that you have to look at. But the first one that most people look at intuitively is the money. So when a lot of people think about money, they say, oh, I got that figured out. I know I need to make $100,000 a year. And that's a really poor way to go about it because that only looks at one component under that money category. And so you need to start to think about whether the money is erratic, predictable, seasonal, lumpy. What are the valuation multiples that are going to provide that return on your money? What are your valuation multiples going to be when you sell this business, or will you even be able to sell it? What will that money look like in terms of whether it is tax advantaged or tax disadvantaged? There's a lot of different components that go under the money as opposed to, well, what's the net income? I like that number. That's good. I'll take it. Like, you don't want to go about it like that. And so the second category is time. Now, a lot of people think they've already got this figured out, and they'll come to me and they'll say, Tony, we don't need to worry about that. I already asked the seller how many hours a week he's working, and he says 30. So we're good to go. What's the third category? What's next? Doesn't work like that because there's a shit ton of components under the time umbrella as well. For example, expertise. So it might take the seller 30 hours a week to manage that business, but it might take you 60 because you kind of don't know what you're doing quite yet. You haven't been running it for 10 years. So it doesn't even matter what the seller is doing in terms of how many hours a week he's working. Also, how erratic is that schedule? Are you working in the middle of the night? Is it daytime? Is it completely erratic? Is it completely predictable? Is it one long stretch? Who knows? You've got to be able to look at whether you can even manage that business, whether you have the skills at all to manage the business. And so also knowing exactly what you're doing in that time. Well, are you climbing cell phone towers? Are you digging ditches? Are you managing people? Knowing what you're doing is also one of the most important components of that time umbrella, as opposed to just saying, oh, well, the seller works 30 hours a week. I'm good to go. Like, don't do that because it's going to blind you to all of these other really critical components that are under this time umbrella. And so the third and final category, which is the hardest to assess and also the most important, is your variability. And so there's a ton of different components that go under this, and a lot of people miss these altogether or do it really poorly because what we're looking at is how scalable is the business? Are there any caps? What are our risk levels looking like in terms of our acquisition risk, transition risk, operational risk, and market risk? Are we going to run this business into the ground? Because a business that makes $100,000 a year and only takes 5 hours a week to manage, that disappears in 1 month because it gets shut down or whatever, maybe it's not such a great business after all. Most people are only focused on this net income idea, what the annual net income is, and how many hours a week the seller is working. If you look at just those two components, people get screwed. And secondly, they can't tell the difference on whether they should get a storage unit or a bread route or a FedEx route because they're not looking at all of these three umbrellas and all of the components that go under each of those. So anyway, hopefully this helps out a little bit, that you can start to compare one business to the other, looking at those three primary categories, and then also, more importantly, all of the components that go under those umbrellas so you can start to say which business is right for you. In some future videos, I am going to compare some businesses to one another, and you can start to see how this framework actually plays out in reality. Drop a like, subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.